how many restaurants are there in San Francisco? My name is Ilana Walder-Bizant. I'm a former Yahoo APM, and in this Exponent Expert video, I'll be answering the estimation question, how many restaurants are there in San Francisco? So the first thing I want to clarify with this question is how we're defining restaurant. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume that we mean places where people go out to sit down and eat in a meal. So bakeries don't count, coffee shops don't count, and to-go only places don't count. So with that clarified, I'm going to actually approach the estimation. And I can think of two ways to do this. One is population-based and one is area-based. So I'm going to start by estimating with the population-based method, and then I'll use the area-based method to sanity check my result. So population-based estimation. Well, start with how many people there are in San Francisco. And we want to use round numbers whenever we can. So I'm going to say 1 million. I know it's probably a little less than that for the technical population of SF, but there are tourists, there are people nearby in the South Bay and East Bay who might venture over for dinner. So let's call it 1 million. Next question is, how often do these people eat out? And my assumption would be that given that we're counting both lunch and dinner, and that we've got a lot of young, high-earning professionals, people are eating out pretty often. I would say probably at least 4 to 5 meals a week between lunch and dinner. And so my guess is going to be that on any given day, 3/4 of the population eats 1 meal out. That's 750,000 people going to restaurants. So I'm going to start writing these numbers down, as you should. So we have 1 million population, 3/4 eat out per day equals 750K eating out per day. So now we need to know what the capacity of restaurants are and how many restaurants we would need to serve that many people eating out. So when I think about a typical restaurant, the typical table size is 4. You see a lot of tables of 2, but we also see a lot of larger parties. So let's say tables of 4. And of course, there are large, medium, and small restaurants. But I would say the typical restaurant probably has 20 tables. So 20 tables of 4. And how often do they turn those tables in a day? Well, it depends whether they're open for both lunch and dinner or just for dinner. I know that typically a dinner restaurant is only going to be able to turn their tables twice. And I don't think you typically turn your tables at all for lunch. You're usually open for about 2 hours at lunchtime, and you can only seat 1 seating in that time. And given that some restaurants are open for lunch and some aren't, I'm going to say you get 2.5 turns on average. So let's multiply that together to get the capacity. Tables of 4 with 2.5 turns and 20 tables. That's 20 times 4 times 2.5, which equals 20 times 10, which equals 200. So the typical restaurant can serve 200 people per day, and we have 750,000 people eating out per day. So now we just need to divide 750,000 by 200. And I'm going to use a shortcut. I'm going to divide 750,000 by 100 to give me 7,500. And then I'm going to divide that by 2 to get me 3,750. So this population-based method is telling me that there are 3,750 restaurants in San Francisco. That seems kind of reasonable to me, but I'm going to also do this area-based method to sort of double check that. So San Francisco is famously 7 miles by 7 miles. Perhaps that's not exact, but people like to say that and it's close enough. So it's a 7 by 7 mile grid. And a average standard city block is 20 blocks to a mile. So that would give us 140 blocks by 140 blocks. So we can multiply that to get the number of square blocks in San Francisco. That's giving me 19,600 blocks in San Francisco. Now, these are small blocks, so we're not going to have a restaurant every block. I would say, based on my experience living in San Francisco, obviously there's a lot of those blocks taken up by parks too. So I would say you probably have one restaurant every 5-ish blocks. So if I round that to 20,000 square blocks in San Francisco, and I divide by 5, that would give me 4,000 restaurants in San Francisco. That's quite similar to the population-based estimate I got of 3,750. So I'm going to say that, yes, I think there are around 4,000 restaurants in San Francisco.